So the long anticipated Switch 2 has finally been revealed, and a lot of people are not as excited as they should be. They're not considering the capabilities of the Switch 2, the 4K Marios, and all this potential that this device offers, but instead, they're concerned with the $449 price, rightfully so. This is the most expensive Nintendo console to date. So the Nintendo Switch 2 at $449 US. Think about the counterpart of that, the Canadian price, which is 639 Canadian dollars. So Canada is also experiencing that sticker shock that a lot of people in the US are also experiencing. Here's the thing about the Nintendo Switch 2. If we look at that direct and what the console is and what it's offering, I feel like Nintendo did try to cater to a lot of the internet. So a lot of people on the internet, since back in the Switch Pro days, have been asking for the Switch 2 to be a more capable, more powerful system from Nintendo. A lot of people said they wanted to see the same form factor stay. A lot of people even called it a perfect form factor. They were happy with it exactly as it was. They just wanted more power. And it seems like Nintendo took that to heart, which is kind of odd considering Nintendo usually likes to do their own thing and completely ignore everybody that's making these requests or, what they want in their system. Nintendo will just do what they want, but instead, oddly, it seems like they took that into consideration because here we have a 4K Nintendo system, we have support for 120Hz display, and we have voice chat, and a lot of these things that a lot of people were asking for from the Switch 2 is now there. But it comes at a cost, $449. So I think the price, it is expensive, it is overpriced, but I also think I see why it got up to that point, because you can't expect ROG Ally performance or Switch 2 performance and get it for that $299 price tag of the original Switch. When the original Switch came out, it was $299. But that price was the top end of what you can charge for a device as weak and as simple as the original Switch was. They were basically selling it because of the Nintendo brand. The Switch 2, on the other hand, it's brought it up a good bit in terms of power and in terms of capability, and that's going to reflect in the price because the tech that's inside of the Switch 2. I still personally think if Nintendo wanted, they could have eaten some of that price. They could have brought the price down and actually decided to sell them at a loss so they would lose money per Switch 2 sold, but at the same time they could have made that money up later down the road with accessories, with games, these $80 games that we're getting now with Pro controllers, subscriptions. There's many ways that Nintendo could have made up the price if they decided to sell the Switch 2 at a loss. But Nintendo clearly doesn't care for us like that, so they're not going to sell it at a loss. They want to get the most amount of money out of you, and that's their number one goal, clearly, based off of the way that they have done this whole presentation and how they've discussed the price. A lot of people think that the tariffs have something to do with the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 being as high as it is, but we can confirm now that it's not part of the tariffs, and here's why. The Switch 2's price was revealed right after the Switch 2 Direct on Nintendo's website, so they shadow dropped the price of the Switch 2 on their website. They chose not to show it to you in the Direct because obviously they knew you'd feel some type of way about the price. So instead, they shadow dropped that price. You had to go looking for it, and it was on their site. But the reason we know that it had nothing to do with the tariffs was because later on, a couple of days after the Direct, so just very recently here, Nintendo had decided to tell everyone that the price, that the pre-order of the Nintendo Switch 2 would be paused while they see if the tariffs would have any effect on them. Meaning that price was originally decided before any tariffs were taken into consideration. So Nintendo feels like what they're offering you in the Switch 2 is what is worth the $449 price tag. I personally, like I said, I think it is overpriced, but I think it also makes sense. So it's kind of weird. It is an expensive system, but it kind of makes sense because a lot of people aren't considering that this is a much more capable system, and performance costs money. That's why the higher up in performance you go, look at the PS5 and then look at the PS5 Pro. There was a pretty big discrepancy in price for these two PS5s, and it's because one of them was a lot more capable and had better tech inside of it versus the other one. And it's sort of the same thing with the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. It's sort of the same thing. So yeah, Nintendo could have eaten some of the cost and sold it at a loss to get them out the door, but they chose not to. What I think is weird is they could have packed something in with the Switch 2. So they could have included a Pro controller, for example, or the Switch 2 camera could have been included with your purchase, or Mario Kart World, or any of these accessories or games or whatever it may be could have been included, but instead, right down to Switch World Tour, or whatever it's called, the tech demo game for the Switch 2, right down to that, they're charging you for it. So people can sense the nickel and diming. If you look at Sony with the PS5, they included Astrobot, they included Astro's Playroom in the Switch, in the PS5. Every single PS5 sold had Astro's Playroom pre-downloaded, ready for you to test the capabilities of your system, and more importantly, the capabilities of the DualSense controller. That was the whole point of Astro's Playroom. Nintendo did no such thing. It's not going to be pre-packaged in with your Switch 2. Instead, they want $10 for the tech demo for the Switch 2. And I think it's every little bit, the reasons, these little things that keep on adding up are the reason that people feel kind of burnt by the price of the Switch 2, because they can feel that Nintendo is nickel and diming them for this system. Whether or not that'll affect the Nintendo Switch 2 in the future, I'll keep you posted on that, because we'll just have to wait and see. We won't know for a while yet, because I feel like when the Switch 2 comes out, everybody's going to go out and get one. At least the hardcores, the enthusiasts, people that have been waiting for one, they decided to pick up the Switch OLED because they were waiting for the Switch 2. I feel like all those people will go out and it will have what seems to be a good launch. Plus it has some pretty killer looking titles that are going to be launching with it. We got the new Donkey Kong game, which is finally a brand new Donkey Kong game. We haven't had any new Donkey Kong games. There have been ports and remasters of older Donkey Kong games. But this time, this is one of the launch titles. And from some impression videos I've watched, a lot of people are saying it feels like a sequel to Mario Odyssey 2. So the gameplay is probably that fast-paced, smooth-feeling gameplay from Odyssey 2. But regardless of all that, with its good launch lineup, a lot of these hardcore and Nintendo fans and people that have just been waiting, and people who aren't, super strapped on cash, or they're just willing to, they're going to go ahead and buy the system. But we won't know the effects of the Switch 2's price until a little later down the road. So I would say between a year and 2.5 years after release, we'll see if the Switch 2 just starts to slow down in sales, or if it just continues to just sell like the Switch 1 did. So that's when we'll know, is a little down the road, if this affects Nintendo and their sales. So yeah, it's not the tariffs. It is the nickel and diming that people are upset with. I think it's a lot of the realization that Nintendo's willing to eat no cost. It's all on the consumer. Whether it's the tariffs, whether it's the tech, regardless of what it is, they're not willing to take a hit on any sort of financial position that they have on the system. They would rather pass that hit on to their fan base, and I guess that's why people are upset. So for me personally, I will go out and buy the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's because I am curious about the most powerful Nintendo console ever made, and the first 4K Nintendo console of all time. I'm curious about that, and I'm curious to try these games at these high resolutions that Nintendo has promised in their Direct. So for that alone, and the price is semi-justifiable to me. I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it's semi-justifiable. It sort of makes sense just based off of the capabilities, like we said. So based off that, I'll personally go check it out. If you want to check out the unboxing with me, just subscribe to this channel and we'll check it out together. Other than that, just leave a comment letting me know what your thoughts are on the price of the Nintendo Switch 2, and if you think it's fair or unfair. Thanks you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.